All right, good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to this webinar about teaching argumentative writing across the content areas. My name is Darren Butler. I'll be your presenter today. I've been a writing specialist and consultant with schools for over 15 years. I'm also a published author. I write a middle grade series called Abbey Girl Spy, have a little fiction, uh, fantasy fiction novel for elementary grade as well. I write young adult novels, biographies. So I'm very much involved in the process of writing as a writer on a day-to-day basis. But I'm also involved, of course, in teaching the craft of writing to students kindergarten through 8th grade. And of course, I've even taught in high school as well. So in my 10 years of writing specialist, I work with schools all across Alabama in particular. But I've also now been able in my new job to travel across the country and spend a lot of time talking to teachers, administrators, just really thinking about where we are in literacy in our classrooms and how that goes along with writing. As we know, the International Literacy Association used to be the International Reading Association. After 6 decades, they have changed their name. A major movement for them, and I believe to include writing as part of that. So I was speaking just a few weeks ago at the Alabama Reading Association conference, and I was very honored to have the president of ILA, who was present there to give an award to one of our members here. And she came into my session I was doing about project-based learning and writing and that, and had a chance to talk with her afterwards about writing and how important that is. So it's great to hear people at that level in our country talking about the need of writing being more present when we are talking about literacy. Today we're going to focus on opinion, persuasive, and argumentative writing. So it's really kind of all the same type of writing. We understand that. And the concept behind this is we look across the country as we have Common Core, we have individual states, college and career readiness standards, even like Texas, who has their own TEAC standards. Now, every state has definitely embraced this concept of writing and working to a higher standard, and I really applaud that as a writing specialist as well as an author. But when it comes to this mode of writing, there tends to be confusion. There tends to be things that are frustrations for just that language arts teacher, not to mention the fact how we now disperse that across the content areas. Because think about math. Why would you want to do this mode of writing in math? Well, to me, I think it's very simple. I think for a math teacher, you have math word problems, you have math skills, and we have opinions about different ways to approach. Because with our different standards and different skills that we're teaching and approaches to doing math problems, we know there are different ways to find an answer to a problem. And how you may go about that would be different from child to child. Okay. So if a student can go through and say, okay, here's my math word problem. Maybe I'm trying to find perimeter or area, whatever it may be, to solve this problem for putting in a fence or in a swimming pool in someone's backyard. There may be more than one approach to finding the answer of how much fencing you need. How much area are we covering, including the pool and the ground and the concrete and all that. There are great problem-solving techniques there, but there are different ways to find that answer. So I think a student could state their opinion and say, here's how I think we should go about this. But we all know that opinion is nothing more than opinion unless we back it up with facts. Agreed? Absolutely. So then if that's opinion writing, what is persuasive? Well, just by nature of the name, we're trying to persuade the reader to think the way that we think. I often think about this a lot now as we're strolling through our Facebook pages. We see lots of discussion, everything from religion to politics to all different kinds of things. And people are not really embracing the art of persuasion, are they? They tend to be on rants and raves about different topics. If we were going to say the pen is mightier than the sword, that's great and wonderful. But there's a certain art to persuading the reader, isn't there? Now, so then what is argumentative? Argumentative, to me, we look at more than one side. We can't just say two sides. There's not just two sides to an argument. There are many things that come in layers of an argument. There may be two obvious sides, a for and against, and that's great, but there could be different shades of that as well. It's kind of building that whole nature of debate. So you can debate a side, debate an issue, debate a concept, and bring those argumentative skills into play. It's kind of under all the same umbrella when we look at standards across the country, but there are different little kind of modes and points of how we go about that. If I'm a science teacher or a social studies teacher, how I go about that is similar to math because there are different things that I want in those content areas, isn't there? There are just simply different things that I want. All right, so I'm looking, we may have a little issue here, a little problem. Let me bring this back up and see what's going on. Make sure we don't have any problem there. Okay, I think we're all ready. I'm seeing a thing here. Okay, so I see Delia, you're saying you can't hear anything now. Let's see, everything should be rolling. Ryan, Delia, can you hear? Just saw your little alert there. I'm getting great sound on this end. Let's see if anything is going on that I've missed for you there. Okay, we're showing, we've got everything is unmuted, everything's going fine. Okay, I'm going to step back in, Delia. Okay, great. So Catherine, if you can hear and see, great, wonderful. So Delia, I would ask you if you can hear me, just check your plugins because everything should be going great there. You may want to check your control panel and see if maybe something got clicked there. I apologize for that. All right, great. Let's go back to our presentation there. Okay, fantastic. All right, so it all comes down to keywords. If I'm in a science class or a social studies class or a math class, I can really embrace this mode of writing if I put the right keywords out to my students, can't I? Okay, and that's the first step. When you're teaching your children how to write, we're going to talk today about the process of writing and how it pertains to all this. But keywords are very important. Okay, and these are some of the popular keywords that we see in instructions. You know, state your opinion, persuade, convince, argue. These are a few we see. You may see others depending on the type tests that you are giving there in your state. So bring these in. I would really suggest that you embrace these in your classroom, put them up, surround your students with them because they need to be very visually aware of these keywords. They need to recognize it because this is very different than explaining and informing. When you're explaining and informing, I think it's a great time for you to have that discussion with your students to say when you explain and inform, you're not stating your opinion. You are simply regurgitating facts, you're citing evidence, and this is the way it is. But when you're asked to give your opinion, we're bringing that personal side into the writing, aren't we? And whether you're a second grader or you're an eighth grader, we have opinions, and that's wonderful. But we have to teach our children you can't say this is the way it is just because. That's not a strong opinion, right? There's no facts to back that up. If we start in those early grades and we teach them to state an opinion and then how you back it up, here's the research we found, here's the proof, here's the evidence, here's the example, and then you use that in the art of persuasion to persuade the reader, you can win the reader over. Same thing goes true with arguing two sides. In science and in social studies, in those content areas, you may be teaching a theory or teaching an event in history, and you want to say, tell me how you believe this event in history has affected us today in the 21st century. This happened in the 19th century, but how has it had a long-lasting effect today? What's your opinion about that? So then the writer has to bring that in together, don't they? They may have to go out and find other sources to help support what they think and what their view may be. So keywords. And if you're writing instructions for things you're doing with your students in projects, at the end of units, or just daily writing, think about how you use the keywords. That way we keep it consistent and keep a lot of continuity through the task of writing that your children are doing. So now, why? Why do we need to do this? Why is this so important? Well, we could say it's for our assessment at the end of the school year. Okay, that's a great reason. I think it goes far beyond that. I think assessments just help us to kind of bring skills together and to kind of gauge where we are with those. The bigger picture is down the road, isn't it? high school and especially college or the workplace. Now, we know that every child's not destined to go to college. That may not be their thing. We hope it is, but it may not be where they end up wanting to be. They may go directly to the workplace, but the workplace is full of this, stating opinions, backing things up. Hey, I think we should do this. Let's try this. Let's do that. And you can't just say, because I thought of it. You have to have research to back it up. So you're giving students great life skills. And what I like about doing it in the content areas, we're starting to touch on all the things our children could grow up to do in different fields out there in the workplace. For college, if our students, as we're progressing through and they take their ACT or SAT and they go and they find the college they really want to go to, if they're scholarship eligible, they're going to go and possibly write an essay in 30 minutes, 40 minutes, under those time conditions. It may also include an interview. And our students need to be able to pull their process of writing into whatever the subject may be. And we know that as we look at traditionally how these essays go, it's not going to be things like, why do you love your favorite sport? It's not going to be like that. It's going to be on some issue topic. And they're going to bring that opinion writing in. A young lady that I met just a few weeks ago during the Thanksgiving break, she is my cousin's stepdaughter. And she is applied to a wonderful girls' private college. And she just received the presidential scholarship. Now, she's very smart and she did very well in her SAT, but these were all these students brought together, and someone was going to walk away with this huge scholarship. She had 30 minutes to write a 5-paragraph essay and do an interview, and it translated into a full ride for 4 years at a fairly expensive girls' private, college. So that's the wealth you can show your students and why. Now, let's think about obstacles, because it all sounds great, Mr. Butler. Sounds like you love what you do. I want to bring that passion in my own classroom, but I know that you're going to face obstacles. Even in your language arts classroom, or if you're a science teacher, math teacher, social studies, what are some obstacles that you're going to face? And if you'll put those there inside oh great, Delilah, I'm so glad you can hear now. So let's take our question box there where you've been responding, and I'd like to hear your input here. What are some obstacles that you're going to face in teaching argumentative writing or just writing in general across your content areas? Okay, so share those with me, please. What are your thoughts? Time. Tori, you're exactly correct. Time, if we were playing Family Feud right now, I always think of this. The number one answer is time. Because writing takes time. It's much quicker to do a multiple choice. I'm not against multiple choice. I think multiple choice questions teach great critical thinking skills, great reasoning skills, but it can't be the end all tell all, because how many times in the workplace do you think people in corporate America have to do multiple choice questions? We do a lot of writing in corporate America. We absolutely do. So I think time is very difficult to deal with. Student motivation. Thank Megan, you're right, exactly. Prior experience and knowledge. Catherine, thank you. Those are great answers. Students are not motivated to write. So why? My opinion, and I'm working on this in the book that I'm working on right now called The Process of Writing. It comes down to frustration. They see writing as a chore. They see writing as, oh, I have to do this. And they don't want it. They're not excited about it. So why should they do it? So if we can do away with the frustration, where does the frustration come from? They don't have a clear process. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. Prior experience is right. Now, I had a conversation just earlier. I was talking to some teachers in Texas and Georgia, and we were talking about how, students who come from maybe a very rural or a very underserved kind of community may not have a lot of experience. And, I don't think writing and your knowledge comes from going to Disney World or jetting off to Paris or whatever. I think whatever our life is, what life has handed us, gives them great things to write about. But I do agree that they may come to you in your grade level not having the knowledge about certain content area material. They don't have the skills they need for writing. So that's something that I always encourage schools when you're thinking about literacy and thinking about writing. It's all about vertical alignment. It's all about getting those standards going, getting a process in place, and building continuity and consistency across your grade levels so that you're building those skills slowly but surely till you have really wonderfully literate students by the time they exit your school. Planning, okay? Planning for the unexpected when your kids struggle, how to accommodate for all the different types of learners. Boy, that's the truth. I spent 15 years in the trenches, so I get it. I did. I was going school to school working. I was working with schools in Alabama who were taking the Alabama Direct Assessment on writing. And these schools were scoring, as they were testing fifth graders and seventh graders, they were scoring an average of 8% to 42% passing the test. Now you can imagine me walking to a school and only 8% of your fifth graders last year passed the test. That's a huge problem. But it was pretty miraculous how you go in and you tweak what they're doing, you give them the tools they need, and motivate that classroom teacher. And all of a sudden, it's turning the program around. Now you're hitting 70%, 80%, 96%, 100%. I wasn't waving a magic wand. Writing is a simple task. It is a process, absolutely. All right, in kindergarten, oh, Delia, absolutely. The children always say, I can't write. I ask them to draw pictures and they see them getting frustrated. So Delia, so here's my approach to that. And then we're going to get going on our argumentative writing as well. In kindergarten, put the pencils down. Not what you want to hear. I know you want them to write. I want them to write. But let's not put the cart before the horse. My suggestion is this is what I did with kindergartners during all those years. I started the year out, and everything we did, we group wrote together. Okay, we did group writing in descriptive and narrative and explanatory, informative, persuasive, argumentative, opinion, did all of that together. In other words, they were going through this process we're going to do in just a moment. And I was then writing things on the board, and I knew what we were going to write. I was leading them. By the time we were done and had a paragraph finished, or if we wrote a story, beginning, middle, and end, they felt like they had written it with me. And this was a group thing we did, and they were so excited. Every time I put it on chart paper, hang it in the room, and I made a point of getting principals, other teachers, kids to come in and look at it and make them feel like they had written the most magnificent thing in the world. Okay, so I did that from like early August all the way through the holidays into January, February. By mid-February, early March, and some before, depending on the developmental readiness of the child, I would see them go off to a table and they would start writing. And they were looking up. They were pulling words in. See, they get so frustrated because they want to spell like you do and like I do, and they get wrapped up in that, I can't do it. So I have a 2-year-old at home. She's 2, that's a few months. She's all into painting and drawing and things like that. And it's, your normal 2-year-old stuff. But she's really gotten fascinated by her name. It's Coco, C-O-C-O, and the shapes of the letters. And she's desperately trying, but she's developmentally just not quite there yet, okay? But she wants to, and it does frustrate her, just like you say. So I have to kind of ease that so I know how you feel. And I've worked with 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds in kindergarten, so I get it. Do everything group writing, get that going, and then let them take that step towards writing their own sentences. And if you're nurturing all that, the great thing through all those group writing things like we're about to do today in the webinar, when you do that with them, you are sowing seeds. They're like the magic beans from Jack and the Beanstalk because they're going to be nurtured, they're going to grow, they're going to have confidence, they're going to feel good about their writing, and you'll be amazed at the grammar, punctuation, those convention skills that they're going to pick up along the way. And you've laid this little foundation, you've fertilized their ground for them. And then as they move into first grade, it'll just blossom and grow. And it works, I promise you. All right, so let's keep going. And I want to hear more, Delia, about your kindergartners. So let's talk about the process of writing. Now, honestly, if I could go to every classroom in the country and take the old school writing process posters down and burn them all, I would do it. It's a little rough on me, I know, but it's very old school. It's not indicative of how we write today. It just isn't. The pre-writing, the drafting, all that, that's great, but children don't always understand that. They need something simple. Because remember, it's not just our learning disabled students we're worried about. I'm worried about my gifted students too, who are thinking way out of the box. Because I taught gifted K1-2 for 4 years as a specialist. And I'm telling you, there were some kids that were so incredibly smart, but they could not wrangle their ideas to paper. They had the ability, but they couldn't do it. So that's where the writing process for me started to really get, very much born and enacted, and then working with all the grade levels. So I have some very dear friends, I'm not going to name names, who are all published authors, people that are most likely on the spines of books in your library. One of them was here. She's won the Newbery a couple of times. And we were talking about the writing process. And she said, I don't understand why these posters have not been changed. Because now we have schools writing under time conditions. We're doing all these different things. Why are they not changed? Because you just can't do all those things in those time conditions. I agree. As I was working under writing assessment sort of conditions like you are, I discovered the same thing. So what I've come up with is a 3-tier process. And in the handouts you can download, you'll see I've got this all laid out for you. I'm going to go through these. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. It's something you could take and enact tomorrow in your classroom. And as you work through that, you're going to watch magic happen with your students. I promise. So understand, that's the very first concept. That's the first step in the writing process. Whether you're writing argumentative, descriptive, narrative, explanatory, whatever it may be, your student must understand the task at hand. And that comes back to those keywords, which are very, very important. Okay? If they understand what mode of writing they're working in, then that helps them to focus and get their mindset straight. The second is brainstorming. We have to teach our children to brainstorm. You see, they want to start with that prompt or instructions and go straight to writing and then turn it into you. That's not writing. That's just kind of following the instructions and half-heartedly doing it and saying, here you go. And that's why they get frustrated. They come up with those things. I don't know. I don't get it. I can't do this. They start crying. They want to crumple their paper up. None of that helps. That just leads to putting walls up against writing. Brainstorming is fun, and you teach children that anything and everything counts. It may be in the box ideas, which are really important. Those logical, common sense skills, thinking skills, teach those. What is it? Sometimes a cat is just a cat, but it may be a cat from outer space. So it could be something outside the box. Both of those things are really, really important. When you brainstorm, you use webs. You use T-charts, you use Venn diagrams, you use anything and everything.